Ahead of these guys.
Hi, I'm Margaret.
Well, I'm not. I'm a faculty member. I was the chairman. Well, from 1977 to 1994. Let's pass your time.
I'm trying to speak very loud because I don't know if this microphone is going to work properly. There. Is that better? Well, I want to welcome everyone and thank you all for coming. We have alumni and guests. We have faculty and staff here. We have members of the Ohio State University administration and a large number of members of the Koffolt family. Welcome to you all. We're assembled in the Unit Operations Lab of the Chemical Engineering Department, or now we're the Chemical and Biomolecular Engineering Department. If you notice on the way in, the building was dedicated in 1959, and it's just about it's outdated at this point. We're proceeding to try to develop the funds for a new building. But one of the things we're going to discover today is why this building is named Koffolt Laboratory. And a very interesting observation is that as we're trying to raise money for this new building, and we have major donors and fundraiser helpers, one of the first things they told us was that if we have a new building, or we refurbish this building, even though a lot of money will come in from the private sector, they want to preserve the name Koffolt Laboratory, which I think is a very nice testament to the regard that our alumni have for Joe Koffolt. So we're very pleased to start the program by a greeting from our Executive Vice President and Provost, Professor Barbara Snyder. She has a very busy schedule, and I'm very pleased that she said that she would be here with us. She came from the law school. She joined Ohio State in 1988 as a professor in the law school, coming from Case Western Reserve, where she was also on the faculty. So, Provost Snyder.
Thank you, Stuart. It really is wonderful to be here. I know that sometimes I get invited to these things so that I can personally see these buildings and what needs to be done to them to make sure that we get it very high on the university's capital priority list. But I can assure you that we do know that Koffolt Hall needs some work, and it's being studied right now. It will be either renovated or replaced, and as Stuart mentioned, the name will be preserved. So I'm very happy to be here to welcome alumni, faculty, students, staff, and friends for the unveiling of Marty Schuter's sculpture of Professor Joseph Koffolt. On behalf of the entire university community, I want to extend a special welcome to his son, Tom. We often say around here that what we really are always looking for is someone to inspire us to be just what we know we could be. And it sounds like Joe Koffolt was that kind of person from what I've heard about him. He was that kind of person to his colleagues and to his students, so I'm sorry that I didn't get to know him in person. I know that he was an outstanding teacher and mentor to his students, and apparently followed the careers of some 40 classes and 1,400 graduates of the department. Is it true he referred to them as his jewels? Isn't that wonderful? You couldn't ask for a better representative of the university than that. It is so fitting that the members of the class of 1953, and I'm sure you all are jewels, would commission this sculpture to honor a man who inspired, mentored, supported, and befriended you, and corresponded with you throughout these years. The department enjoyed great growth and changes during Professor Koffolt's tenure, and of course more changes since, including a new departmental name. What is unchanging is the legacy that he left, and the deep respect and admiration that you have for his leadership and his high standards for teaching and research, and of course for his humanity. We thank you for commemorating his legacy to the department, the college, and the university. I know that we're going to enjoy hearing from other speakers who had the honor of knowing Professor Koffolt personally, and that you will all be sharing some of your favorite personal stories. I do want to know, though, whether what the dean told me is true. Did he sleep with a cigar in his mouth? Almost. Well, he sounds like an amazing person. It's a wonderful tribute to him, and I'm happy to be here to represent the university at this wonderful occasion. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Dean Bud Bazelak. Bud's a product of Ohio State, received his PhD here, went on to be a very successful professor in our welding and materials science areas. He became associate dean, then was the vice president for research at the university for a short period of time before taking a deanship at Rensselaer Polytechnic. He came back in, I guess it was January of 2005? July. And has been is back now and really providing excellent leadership for the college. Bud will say a few words.
Thanks, Stuart, and it's also a privilege for me to have the opportunity to spend just a minute with you. That's about what I've been allocated by Stuart this morning, so I'll keep this brief. It's clear that Professor Koffolt was a very special person. In the time that I've been here, I've talked to a number of ChemE alums, and we've often talked about the importance and his legacy and the influence and the impact that he played and had here on students, not only while you were students, but also after you graduated. He seemed to keep track of folks. I think so. He's just a wonderful example and sets a high standard for faculty and administrators here at Ohio State. When I read through this book, and it was a very interesting. If you have a chance, I would encourage you to take a look through this. It's an interesting write-up on the department a little bit, but also Professor Koffolt. And he was really clearly, when I looked through this, he's a person of commitment, commitment and dedication. And there's a few ways. One, he was definitely committed to this great university, to Ohio State. He was a student here. When I first started reading this, I said, he's a West Sider from Cleveland, and he's a Cleveland Indians fan. I don't need to say anything more positive about him, but I will. So he was a person committed to Ohio State. He had many opportunities. A student here, if you go through this story, interestingly, he had many different opportunities to go to other places, to go to industry. He was extremely highly regarded in his field. He could have had opportunities to go to other universities as a faculty member, as a department chair. Talks a little bit about an opportunity he may have had at Notre Dame to go to be a dean. And nonetheless, he kept coming back and saying, this is the place that is important to me. These are the people who are important to me. This is a university and certainly a chemical engineering department that is important. And he chose to stay here. And I think many of you, we all benefited from his making that important decision. So he was a person committed to OSU and certainly to this department. He was a person committed to the excellence and quality and relevancy of the chemical engineering program. If you read through here, there were a lot of changes in some of these programs, but he really kept it, as far as I understand, very much like the welding engineering program that I came out of as a student here at Ohio State, under, interestingly, a similar kind of person, Roy McCauley, a very hands-on, student-oriented program. And that was very important, again, in providing graduates, and there are many examples in here who could get out the door, go to the chemical industry, chemical engineering industry, petroleum industry, wherever they went, Kodak, and hit the ground running and be very successful and be very effective. And that's a tribute to the fact that he was very much a teacher, and very much a student-oriented person. So a commitment to excellence and relevancy and impact of the academic program, and many of you benefited from that value of that program. Third and last, I would guess he was a person committed, and most importantly, to the students. He was somebody who was always focused. He knew the students. He knew them by name. Again, while they were here as students and as alums, he was very much dedicated to their experience. One of the roles, the key roles that as administrators we play, whether you're a department chair, a dean, whatever, is you're there to enable the success of your faculty, but you're also there to enable the success of your students. And there's no question, when I've gotten to know many administrators, read about those currently and in the past, he was very effective, and his highest priority was enabling the success, the career success, the personal success of his students. And again, many of you stand to benefit from that. So I can't think of a better person, here at this university to remember with an outstanding, we're going to see in a moment, and his legacy just lives on through many of you in the crowd. So again, just an outstanding individual who I'm proud to say was a fellow faculty member of here at Ohio State University. So thank you.
Well, now we're going to hear from the two individuals who really made the whole project possible. They are from the class of 1953 and led the fundraising effort that resulted in the memorial statue that we have. So can Bob Bates and Don McDougall join me at the podium? Let me say a little bit about Bob. Bob left this campus and joined Procter & Gamble, and then went on to a career at Monsanto. Don McDougall was in the oil industry the whole time, first at Amoco and then at Mobil. I'll turn it over to Bob.
Thanks, Stuart. Well, Don and I just like to be here. First, we'd like to recognize the other members of our class who are here. Bill Potter in 1953, Bob Wiseman, Roger Briggs are the other classmates. Unfortunately, the rest of them are not here today, although 80% of the class did contribute to the funds that were raised for this statue. It's just something that we wanted to do. When we had our 50th reunion in '53, we wanted to do something for the department, and we had several ideas, and finally we decided on the idea of the statue so there would be a lasting memory of Joe from his jewels. And we really can't say more than what on the plaque it talks about. He was a mentor and educator. He was a friend to all of us. He was a very memorable guy. We'll talk more at lunch about some of the, stupid stuff. But as far as he really was. He's meant a lot to us, and we really do appreciate what he's done. We hope this will honor him, and people for years to come will remember Joe Koffolt. I would like to take this opportunity to thank a couple of people. Dave McCarthy in the Dean's office, when this idea of the statue came up, Dave encouraged us. He was the one that got some initial ideas of kind of how much it would cost and how it would be done, and for that we're very grateful to Dave. We're obviously very grateful to the department itself, to LS, and to Stuart, who kept the project moving along. Marty Shooter. Marty did a great job as far as I'm concerned. I was just lucky enough to go see how she worked in her studio. But she did a great job, and we really appreciate the fact that she was really interested in trying to create Joe as some of us knew him. And as you know, Joe was here for so long, and we knew him at different times. We probably all have a different memory of a little bit of his look, except for the cigar. We all remember the cigar. But Marty, thank you very much. And last but not least, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Geoff Hulse, who really just shepherded this whole thing through. I live in California, Mac lives in Colorado, so we weren't around, but Geoff kept following this, getting the thing through the process, through the university, communicating, taking pictures, and he did an unbelievable job, professional job, and Geoff, I personally want to thank you very much for all the help you gave me. Mac?
Just one other person that I would like to recognize, Tom Koffolt, who you will be hearing more from here, but I think he provided a lot of essential guidance on this project, especially to Marty. So I'd just like to mention that. Also, in the front here, there's a list of contributors from the class of '53. I think as Bob mentioned, it's like 80 to 90% of our class. And is that talk faster. But I would just like to express our thanks as our committee to the self-appointed two-man committee to all of our classmates for making this all possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just mentioned there are several seats that are still left on the side of the the building, my left side as I see. So if you'd like to migrate there, please feel free to do so. Next on the program is the sculptor responsible for the statue that we'll be unveiling, Marty Shooter. She was selected, I think, even before I got to Ohio State in 2004. I'm very pleased with her work. Marty is a professor at OSU Marion. She is very active in the local art scene. I know she's had many showings, both by herself, solo exhibits, as well as in group appearances. And she is the curator of the Kuhn Fine Arts Gallery at OSU Marion. So we really got a great talent to work on this project. So, Marty?
Stuart? Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be with you today. I'm really as excited as you are to see the sculpture, even though I've spent a good part of the last year and a half or more with Joe in my third floor studio. I thought I'd just tell you a little bit of background on me. I haven't always worked as an artist. I started my career as a journalist and an art critic. And I decided that after seeing lots of bad art, I could probably do just as good, and started taking some classes, and that passion propelled me to get my master's in fine arts at Ohio State, and to go on to pursue a career as an artist and a professor, and give back what I got from my teachers, which was great. I thought I'd tell you a little bit how bronze works, so you can kind of better appreciate what you're about to see. I sculpted the original in clay, and built this enormous platform in my studio, which took up almost the whole space, and built Joe on top of that, working from photos from a very young and robust Joe Koffolt in the 50s to a much more seasoned Joe Koffolt later on, and kind of looking at these photos and talking to different people and emails and photos going back and forth and suggestions and hints and discussions, and then finally in the end Tom Koffolt put his, whoa, sorry about that, can't do that, all right, he put his stamp of approval, and we were off and running. And then we had three very large burly guys came to my apartment and cut the statue into three and carried it out. And it went, and how bronze works is you cover it with this very viscous silicone, and it can pick up, it's so sensitive it can even pick up a fingerprint in the original sculpture. That hardens, it's backed by plaster. They remove the clay and they pour in wax, making this kind of thin shell. So they remake the whole sculpture in wax, so you have a wax positive. And then that gets dipped in this ceramic slurry. Ceramic engineers will understand this. This ceramic slurry that hardens, it's a very heat-resistant shell. They put that in this big oven, burn out the wax, and then pour in the bronze where the wax used to be. So you have a thin bronze. And then lots of welding and grinding and polishing and patinaing and then carrying, you have a finished piece. So that's the process of the bronze. I was invited into this project about 2.5 years ago, and it was because of my connection. My professors knew me as a figurative artist and recommended me for the position, and I showed my slides, and that was the first time I had heard of a man named Joe Koffolt. And what I really got, and what really impressed me from the very beginning, was that alumni that used to go here in the 50s would so remember their department head and so admire and want to honor that memory that they would go through the long process. They probably didn't know what a long process it was going to be, but that they would go through the process to raise this money and to commission this sculpture. And it seemed like a project of admiration and even one of love. And it was, in my mind, a tremendous honor to the legacy of who he was for these people. And even though I didn't know him, I got that. And that inspired me through the whole project. I just kept on remembering that I'm working on a project of love. And that was very inspiring. And I wanted to thank you for that opportunity, because that's been a really great experience. Thank you.
And now we have a representative of the faculty, Bob Rotke, who's emeritus faculty of Chemical Engineering Department. I believe the connection, the strong connection, is that Joe Koffolt hired Bob. So, Bob? Get up on
Stu and Geoff reminded me many times that my limit was 3 minutes. It's been more than 25 million since I came to OSU, and so we got about an 8 million to 1 compression that you're going to go through. I tried to figure out how to do this, and what I decided first was I would use every 10th word, because I need 30 minutes to tell you about Joe, and then I figured maybe that wouldn't be too understandable. So in any event, I'd want no complaints about going fast or skipping your favorite story. I first met Joe in 1957 when he was a director of AICAG and came to New York for a director's meeting. I was working for Standard Oil New Jersey Esso Research and Engineering, and he contacted me and asked me if I could come over to New York to meet him. That was the first meeting. There was no problem for me. I had applied to Ohio State in a number of schools when I decided to go into academia. And since I really did want a job or needed a job somewhere, I certainly could do this. And I had spent most of my time in New York City anyway. Well, I wasn't really that much impressed by the cigar. I mean, it really, I'm not a smoker. But one of the things, and the first thing Joe said to me, was that he was looking for people to advance the Department of Chemical Engineering and would back all of us on the faculty to get the job done. And I was to be the fluids expert, fluid mechanics. Now, this subject meant very little to me. It was a very small part of my unit ops course at Berkeley, so I had a lot to learn. I came to Columbus a few months later, and to see what I might be getting into. This was an interview trip, and I'll tell you, the facilities at the time were a bit lacking. The black hole many of you know about, and so forth and so on. But I did know a new building was designed. This was 1957, a couple of years before the year they actually started construction next year. And the design was great for the time, but that was 50 years ago, and I think you can see the difference of what's happened in 50 years, and we are due for renovation and expansion. I think maybe I'm beginning to show it also a little bit. I wandered around the city of Columbus. Actually, there were no cows on High Street, which surprised me because everything else was just sort of a void. I'd come from New York City. I mean, I was 5 years on the East Coast in a cultural mecca, so it was a bit lacking. But looking back, I'm absolutely amazed at what has happened to this city in terms of our symphony, ballet, chamber music groups, several, art and venues for entertainment. We are at the forefront today. Well, the year 1957 was a good year for coming from industry to academia. There were a lot of good jobs. Some departments were ahead of OSU, and some, and actually more behind. Joe Koffolt's department had the most promise. At least it looked that way to me. And it was a good stopping point on my way back to California, where I originated from. Well, needless to say, since then, Columbus has become my home, and it's 50 years or so later, and I'm still here, and I still have stories about Joe. Looking back at our department today, I frankly think I made a good choice for myself, both professionally and personally, and I thank the class of 53 for this reminder.
And next on the program, we'll hear from Tom Koffolt.
Good morning, all. I've checked my Badger jacket and hat, along with Dr. Stewart's, at the gate to the university. They wouldn't let me in with it. So now I'm back to being a, I guess you'd call it a legacy Buckeye. Thanks to the class of 53, this is the fourth time I've had the privilege of participating in an honor for Joe, my dad. The first was the bestowing of the honorary doctorate, Doctor of Science degree in 1972, then the dedication of the Koffolt Laboratories in 77, and most recently the 100th anniversary celebration in 2003. I believe Dad would be especially proud of today, as the honor is from a class of his beloved jewels. I believe you, class of 53, Marty, the wonderful artist who did it, brought him almost to life for the future students of the Chemical and Biomolecular Engineering Department at Ohio State. I hope they may find out what he represented to their predecessors. He was one who believed in them, one who grounded them in down-to-earth principles of chemical engineering, one who brought out the best of their strengths by personally matching them with companies which he saw as a good fit. I hope they will see this guy with a cricket bow tie and the cigar in their hand as his mentor too, as their mentor too. Chemical engineering of today and tomorrow will be certainly more high-tech than his beloved evaporators, filter presses, distillation columns, and his famous nomographs. But his maxim, the need for blood, sweat, and a few tears, will still prevail for those who wish to excel. I'm sure he's saying thank you to the class of 53 for providing him, the opportunity to pass his message on to all who come to the Ohio State University to climb the hill of learning and success. I too am grateful to the class of 53 and to Dr. Stewart for allowing me to participate. It's just wonderful to see you all. Thank you.
Tom, thanks for your heartfelt comments. Thanks to all the people who participated in the program. We're about to see a video, but before then I thought I would take care of a few items of detail. Number one, if you parked in one of the university parking garages, see Sherry. She has validation coupons. So before you leave, stop by Sherry Stoneman. I'd also like to thank a large number of people for making this day possible. We all know Marty's contribution, but as we'll see when we have the screen raised, we have a very elegant pedestal for the statue, which was designed and built by Paul Green and Lee Everard in the department. We have this very beautiful brochure, which I hope you will all read, that was designed by Geoff Hulse, and also the content. Geoff is working on a department history This has been excerpted and is very appropriate remarks for the brochure. I want to thank Sherry again for all of the local arrangements. She's been indispensable in bringing this affair off successfully. And finally, Carl Scott, who's helped get the building ready. And you'll never see such clean windows in Koffolt as you'll see on the Koffolt today. So thanks to you all. Now, the last thing I'll mention is that for those of you who would like, everyone is invited to a luncheon at 12:30, so there's plenty of time to get there, at the Holiday Inn. It's within walking distance, but on the order of 15 to 20 minutes. That's at 12:30. Before then, we have now this video that we'll be very proud to show. Thanks for coming.
I just want to say a word about the video, just so we're all clear about it. Bob Rodkey has a few words of narration that I extracted from the history we ran during the centennial. But most of the comments that were delivered for the video were taken from Joe's retirement banquet. Okay, they're being delivered by Alex Lemon, Joe's retirement banquet, and they're all done in the spirit of fun and all. So let's take it in the spirit. Okay. Ready?
Everyone for coming. Please feel free to avail yourself of some refreshments. Again, 12:30 we reassemble lunch at the Holiday Inn on Lane Ave. Again, wonderful occasion. Thank you.
Good show. How are you? Good to see you. How you doing? You got yourself. Yeah. I thought it was yours. Oh my
Turn the mic down and then turn it back up for the final.
After the meeting today.
Yeah, I like your tie, by the way. It's a great tie. How are you, Dr.
Yeah, it's twice the size. Yeah.
Do you know how much it weighs?
No, I'm sure Paul does.
Paul and me.
Okay. It's hollow in there.
It's hollow.
Yeah, I think so. So the shell got replaced with
firing.